Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel, and it's that time to look at some online tournament results. Now, of course, it's very important to look at the online tournament scene because it's a good glance at what the meta might look like for EUIC, which is of course going to be in a couple of weeks. We've had a weekend full of online tournaments, and honestly, all these online tournaments that I've looked at for today's video all have over 100 plus players in them. So it's actually like a decent size to look at. So I'm excited. I haven't actually looked at the tournament results myself yet. I've glanced at them, but I haven't really taken them in. This is going to kind of be my first reaction to what's doing good in the new format here in these online tournaments. I'm excited. Of course, we got new archetypes getting better, archetypes coming back from the dead all of a sudden. It's a crazy time. I'm excited for it all. If y'all are new here to the second channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We are getting very close to 12,000 subs, and if you want to enjoy the video, leave a like and all that good stuff, and I'll leave a link to play.limitless, the website I am using for today's video, so that we can, well, if you want to play in your own, online tournament, you want to play in one, they're all free. Definitely go check out the site down below. Every time I make one of these videos, I always get one comment, what website is this? I'm like, bro, check the description. All right, so first tournament was the Tournament of Doom. Now, this was the first ever Temporal Forces legal tournament in the new format, and the two decks that made the finals were both Shempao EX Baxcalibur. Now, that's not really a big surprise. Shempao is one of the decks that kind of stays the same, if only, maybe honestly could get better with rotation, mainly because it now has Prime Catcher, which is fantastic for the deck. You have the Buddy Buddy Poffins, which is really, really good when you're trying to get multiple Friggies in play. You got to get your Bidoofs out. The only thing Shempao kind of loses is cross switchers, and it's not really a big loss. But yeah, Shempao definitely is one of the decks I think a lot of people are looking at right now in the new format. Is it BDIF? Probably not. I know it did win the first online tournament. We'll have to see if it won any other online tourneys. Again, I haven't seen the other results yet, but there is a good chance Shempao could be one of the top decks in the format. I think the main selling point of Shempao is it has a good Charizard matchup. We have another Shempao deck here at the second place. Now, this list is different than the first place build. You can see this build, the first place build was more traditional. This build actually plays a different kind of engine, and that engine is the brand new Cypher Maniac's Code Breaking, where you can look at the top or search your deck for 2 cards and then put them on top of your deck in any order you want. So you can use Cypher Maniac in combination with Radiant Greninja's ability or Bibarel's ability to draw into whatever you need. This is actually really good when you're digging for certain pieces, like you're looking for Rare Candy Baxcalibur, for example. You're looking for Superior Retrievals. You're looking for Prime Catcher canceling Cologne. That's a huge combo that Cypher Maniac gets to grab. So the other build we looked at that won was playing Iono in the deck. This build that got second place is playing Cypher Maniac. Now, is 3 Cypher Maniac optimal? Maybe. I mean, you could still probably get away with like just 2, maybe an Iono split. Now, the other thing this deck plays is a Kyogre, another card that I think a lot of people have kind of written off in Shempao. If you watch my last live streams, I was trash-talking this card. It does have the effect, or I guess the attack, sorry, where you can put 3 energy from this Pokemon into your hand and then snipe something for 180. And the logic behind playing Kyogre is it's really good at knocking out liabilities on the bench, like Squawkabilly, Lumineon, Mew EX, stuff like that. It's not a bad card. It's also, like, the problem I have with it is you do not like starting with it. It feels really bad when you open up with the Kyogre. But you know what? The Shempao deck did get first and second place, so clearly Shempao is on the right track. But in top 4, it's not the only deck. It's Giratina Lost Zone, another deck coming over from the past format into this one. Now, Tina does lose Path and yeah, losing Path, right, which is huge. Losing Path sucks. You can't go Rock Sand Path anymore, which is kind of annoying. It's what made the deck so good is the deck could have used Path to peak. Now you don't have Path. Now you're just kind of like a powerful Beat Stick Lost Zone archetype, And honestly, it's still not a bad deck. I mean, Giratina is still a very strong card. You still have access to Abyss Seeking, and now that the format's slightly slower, I think you can actually get away with doing Abyss Seeking a lot more often now. And Giratina can still take multiple prizes, like you have Star Requiem, you have Lost Impact, which does a ton of damage, you have Sableye, Greninja, Cramorant as attackers. The Iron Leaves is really, really good for the Charizard matchup. The Tina deck kind of it does slightly get worse, in my opinion, because it now plays differently than how it used to play, in my opinion, or at least it's not as much of a comeback deck as it used to be. But it is still a very strong deck, in my opinion. And I mean, I'm not surprised to see it get top 4. It did lose, of course, in the top 4. The other deck that got top 4 is another familiar face, and that is Lugia V-Star. Now, I think a lot of people are really hyping up Lugia right now, and that's mainly because it did win that massive Champions League a month ago. So everyone's like looking at Lugia Cinccino like, okay, this is probably the BDIF. And honestly, there is a case to be made where Lugia could be BDIF. I think it kind of checks everything off the board. It's got a good Zard matchup thanks to Cinccino. Your, I guess, Tina matchup's fine. Your Shenpao matchup's probably good. Like, you're good against control because you also have 4 Jet Energy, which farms control. So, like, Lugia is actually, like, a pretty solid archetype that kind of has a lot of good matchups. I don't know if it really has, like, any standout terrible matchups. Obviously, Lugia can lose to itself. We're in the vein that it is Lugia at the end of the day. It's a very piley of a deck. It's a pile of a deck. It's not even a word. Where you're having to rely very heavily on discarding Archeops early on. Losing Professor Burnett does greatly hurt the consistency that Lugia used to have, where you no longer have the Professor Burnett to get double Archeops on a Luminion. So getting Archeops is a little bit more of a challenge now, but Lugia's, a little bit safer to do Read the Wind now. I mean, like I said, the format's slowed down a little bit, so you can actually get away with doing a Read the Wind a lot more often now. But yeah, it's no surprise to see Lugia doing so well. It's definitely, I think on everyone's like radar right now. I've been playing against a lot of it on the ladder since rotation, and it did get top 4 in the first online tournament. Now note this build does play a 4-3 Cinccino line, a very heavy count of Cinccino. But of course, we got good old Charizard in top 8, also 2 Charizards in top 8. Now this build that got top 8 is kind of interesting. It's actually incorporating the brand new Gengar from, well, it's not brand new, but the Gengar from Paldean Fates. It might as well be brand new. It's got a really good ability where it's good against control, where you can switch your active Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. It's basically just a counter for control, right? You play against control, you get Gengar out, you don't care about Snorlax. It's a pretty strong card for that deck. Now, the problem with Gengar, it's a Stage 2 Pokemon, so you have to use Rare Candy, but it's a cool inclusion in the deck. This Charizard list is interesting. It's playing Roxanne in the deck. It's got a Maximum Belt over Prime Catcher, which that's going to be the big story with Charizard in the new format is what is Charizard using for their ace spec? Is it going to be Prime Catcher or Maximum Belt? So yeah, the Gengar is interesting, and I think we'll talk about control a little bit later because I do think that control is looking pretty good in this new format, and it's kind of valid to play Gengar to counter control. There was another Charizard in top 8. This one also playing a 1-1 Gengar, so apparently Gengar is good. This list actually is kind of similar to the last build. It's not only playing the Gengar, it's also still playing the Roxanne. It's got the Maximum Belt. I guess Charizard's playing Gengar and Roxanne now. I'm not sold on Roxanne in Charizard. I feel like Iono's just a better card, but hey, I'm not the one building the deck. But it is a cool 60. It's actually good to note that the 2 Charizards that got top 8 in the first online tourney in the new format were both Pidgeot Charizards and not the Bibralzard deck that's been getting a lot of hype right now. It is interesting to see that Paldean Fates Gengar scene play. There is an Espathra deck in top 8. That's kind of cool. Espathra is not a bad deck. It's got good typing against Charizard. I mean, Roaring Moon is no longer going to be that popular, which would have been nice, but you still kind of beat other stuff with your ability. And the big thing with the deck is you can play Buddy Buddy Poffin, which is a very good card to be able to get your Natus and your Flittles out. They even plays a 1 Bayonet in the deck. Now, Bayonet can really help fix your Shenpao EX matchup because now you have a way to kind of stop Shenpao from going Rare Candy back Excalibur because Espathra just gets completely bodied by Shenpao. But yeah, really cool 60. It's cool to see Espathra have some results here in the top 8 in the first online tournament. And then, of course, we got a Arc Box deck. Now, Arc Piles are also coming back in the meta, and this one is an Arc Aerodactyl deck. Now, Aerodactyl makes sense right now. I mean, it's really good against Lugia. If you go first and you get a turn 2 Aerodactyl V-Star power off, you can stop Lugia from doing their Summoning Star, which is very, very strong. And that's why people are really sold right now on the idea of playing Aerodactyl right now in Arceus. This build does play Crushing Hammer and Salvatore, so it's trying to get that turn 1 Aerodactyl. It's not a bad idea. Salvatore for the turn 1 Aerodactyl is kind of sick. You got the Eerie in the deck. That's one of the ways Arc has been playing now. Instead of relying on like Judge now, it's more about using Eerie to slow your opponent down, to get rid of their items in their hand. And then, of course, you have the 4 copies of Crushing Hammer, which are really, really strong at removing energy. So it's a bit of a disruptive build. You got the Hammer. You can use Relicanth with Aerodactyl V. Aerodactyl V has an attack where you can discard energy on your opponent's active Pokemon. Kind of makes sense. It's a little bit of an anti-meta deck. And that was the first online tournament here in the new format. Heading on, we got the next one. We got the Ditto Forces tournament. And the deck that won was Lugia. Like I said, Lugia is going on a tear right now. The winning deck was, of course, Lugia. And like the other build, it is, it's got the 4-3 Cinccino line, 3-3 Lugia. It's got the 1 Snorlax. This one does have Jack and Collapse Stadium. That's something that the other Lugia deck didn't play. But this is kind of how Lugia is going to be playing from now on. It's kind of cutting out on the supporter or the stadiums, mainly because you don't care about path anymore. Stadium wars aren't as relevant at the moment, so Lugia can get away with just playing either one or no stadiums. You're not going to see Lugia play 2 Collapse, 2 Mesagoza anymore. It's now going to be more about just playing 1, because you got to fit energy in the deck for Cinccino, because you can see this deck does play a ton of energy. That's kind of the big caveat with Lugia. Second place deck, once again, was Giratina, just proving Giratina is not dead. I think part of maybe what gives Giratina success right now is maybe just people are just playing it because they have it built already from the last format, so they're just playing it. If they don't have anything else built, maybe that's why. But Giratina's still not a bad deck. Again, it still has potential in the meta. It's still a very powerful archetype. It just loses Path to Peak, which does make it slightly worse. Now, the deck in top 4, we got our first look at a brand new archetype. We got the Ancient Box deck here. It did get top 4 in this online tournament. Really cool to see. I think this deck is a cool archetype. Its main issue that I have with it is it's a little bit of a bricky deck, depending on whether or not you can get your Radiant Greninja up. But if you get past all that, Ancient Box can be a very powerful deck. It reminds me a little bit of Reggie's from back in the day. Now, this build does play a Roaring Moon EX in the deck, and that's something that I have been seeing in the Ancient Box deck. So you're either going to be seeing Ancient Box with just 1 prize Pokemon, or you're going to see Ancient Box incorporate a couple Roaring Moon EX in the deck as a big attacker. And the Moon does make sense. You get Frenzy Gouging, which can instantly knock anything out. You have a nice big attacker. Sometimes you can rely on Calamity Storm. You can play Dark Patch. And Roaring Moon does synergize nicely with the baby Roaring Moon with the Dark Patch engine and stuff. So it makes sense to try to squeeze in the Roaring Moon EX in the deck. It is an interesting inclusion for sure. And we'll have to see. That's the thing with Ancient Box. We'll have to see what build is better. Is it going to be better as a 1 prize attacking deck with no Roaring Moon EX? Or is the Roaring Moon EX optimal in the deck? And is it the way to play? And I guess that's the big thing we're going to find out. The highest placing build so far we've seen getting top 4 here did play the EX. We got an Arctina in top 4. Another deck that I think a lot of people are really high on right now is Arctina. Arctina does get a lot stronger with rotation because the format slows down, and Arctina seems like a pretty powerful and disruptive deck. Now, this build is playing some pretty disruptive engines. It's got 3 copies of Judge, and it's got 2 copies of Eerie. Now, one thing I kind of don't like about Arctina is its Lugia matchup. So I like the idea of just playing a lot of Judge in the deck. Sometimes you can just Judge a Lugia into 4 energy, they brick and then you win. You got the 2 Eerie in the deck, which can be really annoying too. You got the Maximum Belt, the Iron Leaves Tina combo with Belt can be really good against Charizard. You got the Gardenia in the deck. Gardenia is an interesting card to see in Arctina, but it is an interesting 60, and yeah, Arctina looking at pretty promising in the new format for sure. And then we got a Control deck. Now, Control is a very good deck in the rotation. It boots a lot of good matchups, right? And, I mean, the way the meta is playing right now, you're still seeing, other than, Charizard playing Gengar, decks are not really going to be respecting Snorlax. Mainly the one thing decks can now use is, Prime Catcher, but Snorlax can play around Prime Catcher if they really wanted to. So, I do think that Snorlax is in a very good spot in EUIC. It's honestly one of those decks that's waiting for a big breakthrough, because it's a scary good deck. Snorlax is legit kind of scary. I think this deck has a lot of potential in our format. I think it's a very strong deck. And yeah, it's very good. I think Control is in a very good spot right now. I think people are still kind of cracking the 60 on it, and I think it's still waiting for that one big breakthrough for the deck to just kind of open up the floodgates and make everyone realize the deck is good. Because the deck is good. Now, most decks right now just aren't really even respecting Snorlax in our new format. So yeah, Snorlax getting top 8, it's scary because it's good. And then we got another Shampoo in top 8 here. This one is playing at that Cypher Maniac, but it's also playing an Iono. So it's playing the 1-1 split. It does have the Prime Catcher, the Clone, but it does also have the Kyogre in the deck. So I guess people are really into the Kyogre right now. I'm still not sold on it, but you know what? It's getting the job done. We got a couple more Arctinas in top 8 here, back-to-back Arctinas. Got an Arctina here, once again, 3 Judge, 2 Eerie. A bit more of a straightforward list. No, got Gardenia, no Turo in the deck, is playing at Charon's Care instead, which is still a decent supporter to have within the deck for that heal. And then, of course, you do have another Arctina deck here in top 8. This one does have the Turo. It's got the Luminion V in the deck, too. It's got 4 Judge, so really trying to lean into the aspect of spamming Judge here in this build, playing 4 copies of Judge for that hand disruption. But not a bad build, and definitely is an interesting one for sure. All right, moving on. We got the Couch Tournament here. The deck that won was actually Charizard, and it was a Pidgeysard deck, once again playing the 1/1 Gengar. So, yeah, I guess this, like, Pidgeysard, Gengar, Roxanne deck is good. I mean, this is, what, the 3rd time we've seen this list now in this video? I don't know. I guess I can see the Gengar. I think Gengar is honestly a good idea. The Roxanne, I don't know about that. But, you know what? This Charizard Gengar deck is doing good, and Gengar might have to be optimal in Charizard. If that's how we're going to deal with Snorlax, that's how it's got to be. Now, Gengar is not a perfect solution to Snorlax. Snorlax can still beat you if they were to spam, let's say, Eerie. I could see Snorlax just teching in TM Devo if they really wanted to beat Gengar. Like, realistically, if you really want to beat Gengar, you could literally just play one copy of TM Devo in the deck, TM Devo, de-evolve the Gengar, and that's it. I mean, you can hold your rare candies, but they're going to spam Misfortune Sisters and Eerie. So, I don't know. I feel like once Gengar gets, like, people catch on to it, I feel like Snorlax is just going to start playing Team Devo. But for now, the Gengar seems like it's decent. And this list did win this online tournament. Looks like it did beat Iron Hands in the finals. Now, Iron Hands, Iron Crown is looking like a pretty scary deck. I've played against this deck quite a bit, too, and it is pretty scary to play against. I mean, Iron Hands can do some massive damage now with the addition of Iron Crown. It does allow Ampy very much to take some big knockouts on some big Pokemon a lot easier now, which makes it a lot harder to beat because now Iron Hands is going to be tempoing by going 2/2/2 super easily with the addition of the Miraidon in the deck to charge it up. You got the Heavy Baton, the Prime Catcher. The one thing about this build is kind of just, can it really consistently keep up? Because I do think that this deck does have its issues, but it is a very powerful archetype, and Iron Hands can even knock out most basic EXs now with the addition of Iron Crown. Now, we did see it lose to Charizard in the finals. It makes sense. I feel like this deck just probably has an abysmal Charizard matchup. Maybe you have to play Raichu V in the deck in order to beat Charizard. I've seen a lot of people talk about playing Raichu within this deck as a way to beat Charizard, because then in the late game, you can kind of come in with a big Raichu, because you can go, like, knockout Amp, KO a Pidgeot or something, and then, like, go in with the Raichu or whatever. And especially now that the Pidgeysard build is clearly the one doing good. All right, got another Arctina here in top 4. Once again, playing the double Eerie for Judge. Playing a League Headquarters in the deck as a Stadium instead of the Lost City and Collapsed we saw earlier. There's another Lost Tina here, though, in top 4. 2 Tinas in top 4. 1 Arctina, 1 Lost Tina. Once again, Giratina proving that it is one of the strongest V-Stars in the game still. This build here does have Prime Catcher and the Iron Leaves and everything like that. And we got another Lugia in top 8. Once again, Lugia doing pretty good. Playing the one of Collapse Stadium and also playing the Jack within the deck here. I want to see if the Jack ends up being good or not. I'm yet to be sold on it. Could be good, though. Yeah, I mean, it's being played. We got another Ancient Box in top 8. Now, this build does not play any Roaring Moon. It's actually just, well, Roaring Moon EX. It is a single prize approach, and it does have Slitherwing and Great Tusk. And this is what I've been trying out in my Ancient Box deck, is incorporating the idea of playing Slitherwing and Great Tusk. I don't know about the Great Tusk, but I do like the idea of Slitherwing, mainly just here for the Iron Hands and the Arceus matchups. You have, like, a really good early game attacker. And it makes sense. Slitherwing can one-shot Iron Hands, can one-shot Arceus V-Star, with the addition of, like, Defiance Man. But yeah, I do like the idea of the Slitherwing in the deck. And yeah, Ancient Box seems kind of good. I like the idea of it. Doesn't seem like a bad deck right now. We'll have to see where it goes. Again, we got 2 different builds we've looked at so far. One that plays the EX of Roaring Moon. The other that doesn't. We got another Iron Hands, Iron Crown deck here in top 8. Now, this one does not play Prime Catcher. This one's actually opting to play the Reboot Pod in the deck to keep up with the consistency of charging up your Iron Hands. The other thing to note, it does play 2 copies of Gift Energy. Now, again, one of the big things with the future decks, and even the Iron Hands deck, can be the fact that you can easily brick into Oblivion, but when you have the 2 copies of Gift, you kind of have the ability to easily chain your Iron Hands. When you have Gift Energy, you don't have to worry about getting Iono'd into a bad hand. That's, like, really the big issue with future in general, not just the Iron Hands deck. Its consistency issues can be very, they're bad. So, like, that's why it's nice to have the Gift Energy in the deck. And that could be the way to play it. And then finally, there's another Lost Tina here in the top 8, once again. All right, moving on. We got the next online tournament to look at here. We got the Battle Park Tournament. And look at that. The deck that won was good old Snorlax Control. Like I said, this deck could be scary good. We can see why all the Charizard decks are playing the Gengar in the deck, and that's just to help stop the Snorlax deck. Now, this build does play a Mantine. Now, this is a really interesting card. It kind of replaces Echoing Horn in the deck. Put a basic Pokemon from either player's discard pile onto that player's bench. So basically, you force your opponent to bench Manaphy, Jirachi, whatever Greninja, whatever Pokemon they don't want to have in play. Mantine forces that Pokemon into play. It's not as good as Echoing Horn because it's obviously on an attack and a Pokemon, but it is the Echoing Horn replacement. We do see this build playing double Rotom in the deck, 3 Temple of Sinnoh. Yeah, like I said, Snorlax looking pretty good. We can see why the Charizards are starting to play the Gengar. We do have our first Lost Box deck to look at here, and that is going to be a Lost Box deck with Hoopa, Moon, Raikou, and Iron Hands. This is kind of the most popular way the deck's seen play right now over in Japan, and that's using all these different, 2-prize attackers. The Hoopa is really good against, it can be good against Arceus, it can be good against Iron Hands, it can be good in general because it does 50 damage for each energy on your opponent's Pokemon. So there's a lot of matchups where it comes up, and those are like the 2 important ones. You got the Roid Moon in the deck for that big Frenzy Gouging option. You got the Raikou V. Raikou V is insane, by the way, now because you can play it with Force Seal Stone and Prime Catcher. It's a very good way to deal with Lugia, Pidgeot, and Palkia. And then you got the Iron Hands EX in the deck because Iron Hands obviously has Ampy very much, which is very strong. And the big thing the deck has is Iron Bundle, which is great with Iron Hands EX. So yeah, the Lost Box deck is looking pretty scary now, and it's definitely looking like a strong archetype. Now, there are still a ton of ways to theoretically play said Lost Box deck, not just playing it with all these 2-prizers, but this is the way that, it's seen play in Japan right now, the one seeing most meta success, the one that people are talking about. This might be the best way to play Lost Box going forward, and we'll have to see if this kind of continues in our new meta. I guess one thing to note, the deck does have a Rescue Board and the Prime Catcher now, really good additions to the deck. So yeah, I definitely think that Lost Box is in a pretty good spot still. Obviously, the big issue might just be like Iono still, but it's still good. We got another Lugia here in top 4. Once again, playing at the Jack. Looks like the same 60 we already looked at earlier. I think maybe what people are doing are like they're copying the 60s from these online tournaments and just running them themselves and getting like top 8 too. So another Snorlax in top 8. Oh boy, 2 Snorlaxes. That's pretty scary. The Snorlax playing 3 Eerie is also kind of spooky, alongside 4 copies of Crushing Hammer. That's also pretty spooky. And once again, Snorlax looking like a very powerful deck. There was an Iron Hands deck here in top 8. This one does have Iron Leaves in the deck, so it's kind of splitting the difference. I like the idea of Iron Leaves, actually. So when playing the Iron Hands deck, one of the big issues can obviously be dealing with Charizard EX, right? Which we looked at earlier in this video. We saw Iron Hands did lose to Charizard in the finals because that matchup does seem kind of unwinnable. But when you have Iron Leaves, you kind of have a line in that matchup. Instead of maybe playing that Raichu V I was talking about, you now have the Iron Leaves as an option to deal with the Charizard EX. The downside of playing Leaves, though, is you can see this build is playing a Reboot Pod within the deck instead of the Prime Catcher, which helps you kind of tempo the game a lot quicker with Iron Hands. So we'll have to see if this like Reboot Pod engine is better or not. But I like it, and it did get top 8. Those are another Charizard to look at here. This one does also play the Gengar in the deck, and Roxanne, and Turo. Wow, so that's a lot of switching cards, and it's got Prime Catcher over any Maximum Belt shenanigans. Also playing that one of a Mist Energy. I actually don't hate that. We've been seeing quite a few Loftinas already in this video, so I guess it's not a bad idea to incorporate the Mist Energy within Charizard right now. But yeah, Charizard with Gengar. It looks like Gengar is optimal within the Charizard deck. That is a lot of stage 2, so I can smell a nice big TM Devo coming up very soon in the meta where, this deck gets even bodied harder by TM Devo. And we got a deck in top 8 here. It's a control deck with Wigglytuff EX. Now, I did see this on Twitter. This is a really cool idea. So if you don't know what Wigglytuff does, it's got the ability Expanding Body. If it has any special energy on it, it gets plus 100 HP. So the idea of the Wigglytuff is you give it 350 HP with its ability, and there's no path anymore. And you can also combine, you can also combine the Wigglytuff with Hero's Cape, giving it effectively 450 HP. That's just bonkers, but it's a really cool archetype. It is a control deck. It's not a Wigglytuff deck itself, but Wigglytuff can be an attacker. This deck does play 3 double turbo, kind of leaning more into the Pidgeot Snorlax engine, which we have been seeing before, and this is kind of what the deck is aiming to do. Yeah, the Pidgeot engine definitely makes sense within the deck, and it's a cool idea. It's not really a Snorlax deck. I mean, it does play a Snorlax, but it's also got Mawile, Luxray, stuff like that. But yeah, really cool. The Wigglytuff idea is honestly really smart. I like that. Creativity shines today, folks. Then we got another Zard here in top 8. This one not playing that Gengar in the deck. It's playing Turo and TM Devo, and 2 copies of Switch, so it does play 3 switching cards, but again, no Gengar within this Charizard deck that got top 8. All right, moving on. Finally, we got the Card Cavern Tournament. Shout out to Card Cavern. If you're getting codes over there, use code LDF. to get yourself a 5% discount on your order. Of course, the deck that won the tournament, once again, was another control deck. We got another Snorlax deck winning. This one was Snorlax with Pidgeot. Once again, the Pidgeot proving to be very good. This deck definitely is a bit harder to play than the more traditional build we've been looking at earlier. But Pidgeot does add a lot of power to the deck, and if you can play this deck right and you know what you're doing and you kind of know your matchups and lines, this deck can be very, very strong with Pidgeot. And then, of course, you got the Luxray in the deck and the Radiant Charizard for attackers to kind of deal with threats. I guess like a standout card, Daisy's Help. Draw 2 cards, look at your face down prizes. Yo, the Peonia replacement is real. That's actually kind of funny, actually. Yeah, Peonia rotated, which is kind of bad. So I guess now you have the Daisy's Help. I mean, it's not the same, but you can kind of... That's interesting. You can see your prizes. I don't know. I find that kind of funny. But yeah, we do have another Snorlax control. You got the Daisy's Phone, or Daisy's Help with the Arc Phone. Sorry, I guess you can call it Daisy's Phone as the combo. You can Daisy's Phone into Arc Phone to guarantee a card. That's kind of smart, actually. I kind of rate that idea. Cool stuff, cool stuff. All right, the deck that did get second place in the tournament was a Sablezard deck, it looks like. That's kind of interesting. This is a different take on Sablezard. It's playing the Iron Hands EX in the deck, and it's even got a Mew in the deck. Now, obviously, Sablezard does lose Clara, which is a pretty big loss for the deck. You can no longer, loop Charizard as easily now. So losing Clara was a bit of a big hit to this deck. But this build is kind of more approaching a toolbox approach as opposed to just being Sableye, Cramorant, and Charizard. Maybe with like a Mawile and maybe a Roaring Moon. This one's got Mew, it's got Iron Bundle, got the Iron Hands EX in the deck. It's even got the TM Crisis Punch in the deck alongside the Cramorant. I've been testing a lot of Sablezard myself right now in the new meta. I like it. I'm a big Sablezard fan. It's one of my favorite decks, so it's cool to see. All right, we got another Shampoo in top 8 here. Playing no Kyogre, but does have the double Cypher Maniac. Also playing Counter Catcher, Boss, and Prime Catcher, so having 3 Gusting cards in the deck here kind of makes sense. We got a Lugia Archetypes in the top 8 also. Playing a Luxray in the deck. I like the Luxray idea. It's good against Charizard. It can also be really good in the Mirror match. I think that's one of the big reasons why you want to play Luxray right now, is it's really good in the Lugia Mirror match. Reversal Energy is kind of cool too. With Luxray, obviously. And I know Reversal does not work with Cinccino. Yeah, Cinccino's attack is 3 special energy on it, so Reversal Energy doesn't give you 3 special energies. It still counts as 1. It'd be cool if it... I mean, it'd be a little broken, actually. I was about to say it'd be cool if it didn't. It'd be kind of broken if Reversal Energy gave Cinccino plus 210 damage. We got a Tina, Lost Tina here in top 8. Playing the Iron Leaves. Prime Catcher in the deck, stuff like that. Yeah, Tina just still doing good stuff in the new format. Another Lugia in top 8 here, playing no Luxray, playing the Jack Collapse, kind of like the 60 we saw earlier. And then we got another Snorlax in the top 8. This one not playing the Pidgeot EX, playing Pidgeot V and Shiyu, though. Does play Crushing Hammer in the deck, just try to slow the opponent down. Triple Eerie. Yeah, just more of a traditional Snorlax deck over playing it with Pidgeot EX. A little bit less complex, right? So... there you go. And then finally in top 8, we got another Lost Box deck. Now this one, whoa. This is like, kind of reminds me a bit of Tord Pile. It's got Hands, Leaves, and Tina in the deck. Oh my god. And an Iron Valiant of all cards. Now this is a spicy Lost Box deck. This is what I like about Lost Zone decks. You can literally just put like a bunch of random stuff in the deck and like the deck gets top 8. You know what? Cool stuff. Is this actually like good? I honestly don't know. It seems like there's a lot going on. I mean, the 1/1 Tina we've seen before. Obviously, Tord did popularize that idea. Iron Valiant, something that people, kind of initially tried at first with Paradox Rift when it came out, but never really went anywhere within the Lost Zone archetype. But it's kind of cool. You know what? Spicy archetype. Is it good? Not sure, but it's a really cool Lost Box deck. Yeah, cool stuff. Yeah, there you go. Those are the first results from the first online tournament. There were a couple other online tournaments with post rotation. They were a little bit smaller. I just kind of wanted to talk about the ones with over 100 players because you got to get a better idea of what's actually good. But yeah, things to take away. Lugia's Giratina still surviving. We got Charizard doing good. Charizard's playing Gengar right now, and that just might have to be the way to go considering Snorlax. I mean, we did see Snorlax win, 2 of the tournaments? 1 tournament, 2 tournament? Yeah, Snorlax won 2 tournaments. So the first tournament, we got a Shampoo dub, we got a Lugia dub, we got a Charizard dub, and then we got 2 different versions of Snorlax. Keep in mind, 2 Snorlax dubs. 1 traditional control and then 1 Pidgeot EX Snorlax. So interesting stuff, but those are the first ever tournament results here to look at in today's video. We're going to be doing a lot more of these, obviously, leading up to EUIC as we see the metagame evolve. But this was just the first weekend of Temporal Forces, and it does look really interesting. Yeah, let me know what you think of them down below. Are you scared of Snorlax? Are you going to be teching the Gengar in your deck yourself to counter Snorlax? Let me know in the comments below. And that'll be it for me. And I'll catch y'all in another video. And yeah, leave a like if you enjoyed and all that good stuff. And I'll see y'all later. Bye-bye.